Kestrel approached the spire, his light reflected in its facets. Why show us this? Rill's claws gripped his shoulders. To finish their song, or join their silence. The Haven's hybrids revolted at dawn. Jin woke to the snarl of crystalline claws shredding the ship's corridors. She grabbed her rifle, but the coral fused to her arm lashed out first, impaling a hybrid mid-lunge. It dissolved into ash, its dying screech echoing. Soren, they're tearing the ship apart. He met her at the heart chamber, Kestrel leaning heavily on his arm. The boy's glow was feverish, unstable. The spire, it's calling them. They think they can resurrect the choir. By doing what? Sacrifice, Kestrel whispered, starting with me. The hybrids converged, their claws gleaming. Soren fired, but the pulse bolts ricocheted off their crystalline hides. Jin's coral arm flared, casting a shield around them. Get to the spire, she growled. End this. Not without you. Go. They ran. Vakal's spire hummed as Kestrel pressed his hands to its base. The faces in the crystal writhed, their screams flooding his mind. They're in pain, he gasped. Fix it, Soren urged. I can't, it's too much. Rill appeared, its claws sinking into Kestrel's back. You must. Light erupted, the spire shattered. The blast threw Soren into darkness. When he woke, the chamber was silent. The spire was gone, and Kestrel knelt amid the debris, cradling Rill's broken body. The Guardian's voice was a fading rasp. The devours come, finish the song. Jin stumbled in, her coral arm cracked and bleeding. The hybrids are gone, jumped into the void. Kestrel stood, his eyes hollow. They'll find others, finish what Rill started. Soren gripped his son's arm. What did you do? What I had to. He opened his palm. A shard of the spire glowed there, its light harmonizing with the twin heart crystals. The choir's last note. It's a weapon, a key. Jin eyed the shard. To what? The Devourer's prison. The Haven shuddered. On the view screen, the void rippled. Something vast and ancient shifted in the dark. Chapter 13. The Haven hung adrift in the corpse light of Vakal, its coral hull still trembling from the spire's collapse. Kestrel stood at the viewport, the shard of the first choir cradled in his hands. It hummed faintly, its light refracting through his translucent skin like sunlight through cracked glass. Behind him, Soren and Jin argued over static-filled comms, their voices sharp with exhaustion. We can't stay here, Jin snapped, her coral-encrusted arm twitching as she gestured to the holographic damage report. Life support, at 30%, the hybrids are gone, and that thing, she jabbed a finger at the void beyond the glass, is getting louder. Soren didn't look up from the nav console. We need to reach the Devourer's prison before they fully awaken. The shard is our only chance. Chance for what? A pretty death. To finish the song, Kestrel murmured. They turned. His voice, layered with the echoes of the choir, reverberated through the chamber. The shard's light pulsed in time with his words. Jin's coral arm lashed out, shattering a nearby console. We don't even know where the prison is. Yes, we do. Kestrel pressed the shard to the viewport. Outside, the void rippled, tendrils of darkness coiling into a sigil, a luminari rune for hunger. It's calling us. The journey was a descent into madness. The Haven's engines groaned as it slid into the runes maw, the void peeling back to reveal a labyrinth of fractured realities. Stars bled into nebulae, time looped and stuttered, and the crew's reflections in the viewport began to move independently, mouths stretched in silent screams. Jin's coral arm seethed, its tendrils burrowing deeper into her flesh with every parsec. It's talking, she muttered, clutching the arm to her chest. Rill in here, or pieces of him. Soren adjusted the shields, his hands trembling. What's it saying? Don't trust the bridge. Kestrel, slumped in the heart chamber, didn't respond. The shard had fused to his sternum, its roots threading through his ribs. His eyes, when he opened them, were voids speckled with starlight. "We're close," he said. The prison was a wound in reality, a planet-sized lattice of luminari coral and devourer ichor, its surface pulsing like a cancerous heart. Jagged spires thrust into the void, each impaling a frozen luminari hybrid in mid-scream. The airlock hissed open, releasing a breath of air that stank of rot and ozone. "Cheery," Jin said, her coral arm glowing as they stepped onto the surface. The ground squelched beneath their boots, veins of black ichor writhing away from Kestrel's light. Soren scanned the horizon. "The core is beneath us. We'll need to." The ground erupted. Hybrids clawed free from the ichor, their bodies warped by devourer corruption, crystalline flesh sloughing off, eyes replaced by gnashing mouths. They moved in jerking, insectal bursts, their screams harmonizing into the devourer's song. Jin fired, her pulse rifle shredding the first wave. "Go, I'll hold them." Like hell, Soren grabbed her arm, but the coral yanked her free, hurling her into the fray. Kestrel stepped forward, the shard flaring. "Stop." The hybrids froze, their song faltering. For a heartbeat, the prison held its breath. Then the shard cracked. The devourers awoke. Reality peeled back, revealing entities older than stars, formless, ravenous, their presence unmaking the light around them. They were not creatures, but anti-creation, voids that fed on symbiosis, turning harmony into discord. The prison trembled as they surged toward the haven. Kestrel fell to his knees, blood ichor pooling beneath him. "It's too much, I can't." Soren caught him. "You have to focus." "I'm scared, Dad." The admission shattered Soren. For a moment, he was just a father, clutching his dying child. Then Jin's scream snapped him back. She stood at the edge of the fray, her coral arm engulfed by a devourer's tendril. "Do it, Kestrel, now." The shard's song was a knife. Kestrel plunged it into his chest. Light erupted, searing through the prison, through the haven, through the devourers themselves. The anti-song faltered, the voids recoiling as the first choir's final note rang out, a chord of pure symbiosis, fragile and fleeting. "No," Soren screamed, reaching for his son. But Kestrel was already gone, his body dissolving into light. The shard floated in his place, its glow dimming. The devourers howled, reality stitching closed around them. The prison collapsed. Aftermath. The haven escaped on borrowed time, its coral hull crumbling. In the heart chamber, Soren cradled the shard, its warmth a mockery of his son's pulse. Jin slumped against the wall, her coral arm now a twisted mass of thorns and whispers. "He's in there," she said hoarsely. "The shard, I can hear him." Soren didn't answer. Outside, the void was silent. But in the shadows between stars, something stirred. Chapter 14. The haven drifted in the silence left behind by the devourers, its coral hull weeping rivulets of bioluminescent resin where the prison's backlash had scorched its flesh. Soren sat alone in the heart chamber, the shard cradled in his palms. It pulsed faintly, a mockery of a heartbeat, its light refracting through the cracks in his glasses. He stopped sleeping 3 days ago, stopped eating, stopped everything but this, watching, waiting, praying for a flicker of his son in the shard's cold glow. "You look like hell." Jin leaned against the doorway, her coral arm coiled tightly around her torso like a parasite guarding its host. The growth had spread since the prison, its thorns now digging into her collarbone, its whispers louder. Rill's voice, or something worse, slithered through her mind when it thought she wasn't listening. Weak, ungrateful, liar. Soren didn't look up. Any changes? "The hull's rotting faster, engine 2's dead, and your kid's ghost rock is still quiet." She kicked off the wall, wincing as the coral tightened its grip. "Face it, Splicer, he's gone." The shard flared, searing Soren's palms. He hissed but didn't let go. "He's in here, I just need more time." "Time's the one thing we don't." The ship lurched. Jin stumbled, her coral arm lashing out to impale the wall, holding her upright. Soren clutched the shard to his chest as the Haven's organic systems wailed. A sound like whale song warped through a meat grinder. "What now?" Jin snarled. Soren pulled up the holograph. The nav console flickered, its projections glitching with static. Proximity alert. Something out there. The devourers. No, smaller, human. The vessel was a scarred echelon freighter, its hull pockmarked with old battle wounds, its engines sputtering radioactive exhaust. It docked with the Haven without permission, airlock hissing open to disgorge a dozen figures in tattered hazard suits. Their leader removed his helmet, revealing a gaunt face and eyes sharp enough to flinch bone. "Dr. Vey," he said, "you've been hard to find." Soren froze. Dr. Luren Voss, his old colleague, the man who'd stood beside him in the echelon boardroom, nodding as Soren pitched the Luminari prenatal supplements. The man who'd called Kestrel a marvel of gene splicing before the necrosis set in. "You're supposed to be dead," Soren said. Luren smiled. Reports were exaggerated. Jin stepped forward, her coral arm bristling. "You've got 5 seconds to crawl back to your tin can." Luren ignored her, his gaze fixed on the shard. "We detected the energy surge when the boy ascended. Fascinating. The board wants to study it." "Study this," Jin said, raising her rifle. Luren's smile didn't waver. He snapped his fingers. The echelon squad raised their weapons, not pulse rifles, but jagged devices of luminary coral fused to echelon steel. Stolen tech, perverted symbiosis. "You're not the only ones who learned tricks," Luren said. The fight was brutal, chaotic. The echelon hybrids moved faster than human, their coral weapons spitting acid and shrapnel. Jin's arm moved on its own, deflecting blasts, crushing windpipes, while Soren ducked behind consoles, the shard burning against his chest. "Get to the engine core," Jin shouted, hurling a hybrid into the wall. "I'll fry their systems." Soren ran. The Haven's corridors buckled underfoot, the ship groaning as Echelon's corruption spread. In the engine core, he found Luren waiting. "Still playing hero." Luren adjusted his gloves, the fabric shimmering with embedded luminary fibers. "You haven't changed." "You have," Soren said. "The board used to call this," he nodded at Luren's gloves, "heresy." "Times change. The Devourers showed us the truth. Symbiosis is just another weapon, one you're too sentimental to wield." Luren lunged. His gloves crackled, discharging arcs of bioluminescent energy. Soren dodged, the shard's light flaring in response. It seared Luren's cheek, leaving a smoldering welt. "You think you're saving him," Luren spat. "He's a battery, Soren, and you're wasting his charge." The shard pulsed, a tremor of recognition. "Kestrel." Soren's grip tightened. "You don't know him." "I know enough." Luren struck again, his glove closing around Soren's wrist. "Give him back." The shard erupted. Light swallowed the core. When it faded, Luren was gone, vaporized, his gloves smoldering on the floor. The shard hummed in Soren's hands, warmer now, alive. "Dad." The voice was faint, fractured, but unmistakable. "Cass," Soren whispered. The shard dimmed. Jin found him kneeling in the ashes, the echelon freighter in retreat. Her coral arm hung limp, its thorns crusted with dried ichor. "They'll be back." "I know. And the kid." Soren stood, the shard glowing steady against his chest. "He's alive, trapped but alive." Jin's arm twitched, a thorn piercing her skin. She didn't flinch. "Then let's get him out." In the heart chamber, Soren wired the shard into the Haven's core. The ship shuddered, coral regrowing over its wounds, veins of light pulsing in time with the shard's rhythm. Jin watched, her arm now eerily still. "You trust this?" she asked. "No," Soren input the final command, "but it's all we have." The shard flared. The holograph flickered to life, projecting a star map, a path deep into the graveyard belt, to a sector marked with a pulsing luminary rune. Sanctuary. Another trap, Jin said. Or a way home. The Haven jumped. The sector was a graveyard of dead ships, their hulls strung together by luminary coral into a grotesque constellation. At its center floated a planet, not barren, but alive, its surface rippling with bioluminescent forests and rivers of liquid light. Vakal's twin, Soren breathed. Home, the shard whispered. Jin's coral arm spasmed, thorns drawing blood. Don't, it's using you. Or saving us. The Haven descended. In the forests below, they found the Luminari. Not hybrids, not corpses, true Luminari, their coral bodies swaying in harmony with the planet's song. One approached, its voice a melody of wind and water. You carry the bridge. Soren offered the shard. Can you save him? The Luminari touched the shard. Light blazed, and for a heartbeat, Kestrel stood before them, solid, whole, his eyes human. Dad, he smiled. Then the light faded. The Luminari withdrew. The bridge is broken. To mend it, you must break further. Jin laughed, raw and jagged. Of course. Soren clutched the shard. Do it. The Luminari's claws closed around his throat. As you wish. Chapter 15. The Luminari's clawed grip on Soren's throat wasn't violent, not yet. It hovered there, cold and unyielding, its touch humming with a frequency that made his bones ache. The creature's faceless head tilted, bioluminescent veins pulsing in patterns that might have been curiosity or contempt. To mend the bridge, you must become the fracture, it intoned, its voice a chorus of whispers. Jin's coral arm lashed out before she could stop it, thorns slicing the air between Soren and the Luminari. The creature didn't flinch. Instead, it turned its gaze, if it had eyes, toward her, the coral at her shoulder writhing in response. You carry a shadow, it said, a voice that does not belong. Yeah, and you're a real charmer too, Jin snapped, though her breath hitched as the coral tightened around her ribs. Rill's voice hissed in her mind, a venomous echo. Fools, liars, they'll devour you both. Soren raised a trembling hand, the shard clutched in his palm glowing faintly. Do it, whatever it takes. The Luminari's claw snapped closed. Pain erupted, not in Soren's throat, but in his mind. Visions tore through him, Kestrel dissolving into light, the devourers, Voidmaw yawning wide, the Haven's corridors drenched in blood. He screamed, collapsing to his knees as the shard's light seared his skin. Stop, Jin lunged, but the coral arm rooted her in place, tendrils snaking around her legs. The bridge is broken, the Luminari repeated, its voice merging with the shard's hum. To mend it, you must break. Soren's vision cleared, the pain sharpening into clarity. The shard wasn't just a vessel, it was a conduit. Kestrel's essence was trapped in the space between symbiosis and oblivion, and the only way to pull him back was to shatter the barrier, to let the Luminari's song flood through Soren's own fraying humanity. Do it, he gasped. The Luminari's claw plunged into his chest. Jin's scream drowned in the roar of light. The chamber blazed, the shard's glow merging with Soren's blood as the Luminari worked, its claws weaving filaments of bioluminescence through his ribs. The Haven shuddered, coral walls groaning as if in sympathy. You're killing him, Jin writhed against her restraints, the coral arm now fully coiled around her torso, its thorns piercing her skin. Rill's laughter echoed, bitter and triumphant. Let them die, let it all burn. The Luminari paused, its head swiveling toward her. The shadow speaks. Shall we silence it? No, Soren choked, blood flecking his lips. She stays alive. The creature considered, then resumed its work. When the light faded, Soren lay on the floor, his chest scarred with luminous sigils. The shard was gone, absorbed, its glow now pulsing beneath his skin. He coughed, rolling onto his side, and found Jin staring at him, her coral arms slack but still gripping her like a vice. Did it work? She asked. Before he could answer, the Haven's alarms blared. The holograph flickered, projecting a feed from the surface, echelon dropships descending through the planet's atmosphere, their hulls bristling with hybrid coral cannons. Luren's voice crackled over the comms, distorted but unmistakable. "Did you really think we'd let you keep him?" Soren staggered to his feet, the ship systems responding to his touch before he reached the console. The sigils on his chest flared, and suddenly he felt the Haven, not as a machine, but as an extension of his own nerves. "Get to the guns," he ordered. Jin yanked free of the coral's grip, her arm now studded with broken thorns. "You're in no shape to." "Go." She went. The battle was a blur of light and noise. Jin manned the dorsal cannons, her coral arm interfacing with the Haven's weapons as if it had known them all along. Echelon's hybrids swarmed, their corrupted Luminari tech weapons screeching against the ship's shields. Soren fought to focus. The sigils burned, Kestrel's presence flickering at the edge of his consciousness, a faint cry in the dark. "Dad." He clenched his fists, the Haven's engines roaring as he launched them into the fray. Coral missiles tore through Echelon's dropships, but for every one destroyed, 2 more took its place. "They're going for the planet," Jin shouted. Below, Echelon's forces had breached the sanctuary's surface, their drills spewing black ichor into the bioluminescent rivers. The Luminari writhed, their song twisting into a wail. "The devours stir," the Luminari's voice echoed in Soren's mind. "Their prison cracks." A new tremor shook the ship, not from Echelon, but from the edge of the sector. The void rippled, tendrils of darkness unfurling like claws. Jin's coral arms spasmed. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." The devourers didn't emerge, they unfolded. Reality itself split, their formless shadows leeching the light from the stars. The Echelon forces froze, their hybrids collapsing as the devourers' song overwhelmed their corrupted symbiosis. Luren's scream pierced the comms, cut short by a guttural silence. The Haven systems faltered. Soren gripped the console, the sigils on his chest blazing as he fought to hold the ship together. "We need to jump," Jin yelled. "Not without Kestrel." "Dad." The voice was clearer now, closer. Soren closed his eyes and pushed. The sigils tore open, not his skin but the space between. Light erupted, and for a heartbeat, Kestrel stood beside him, solid and whole, his hand gripping Soren's. Then the Haven's core ruptured. The ship crashed into the sanctuary's surface, coral hull disintegrating as it skidded through a forest of luminous trees. Jin dragged Soren from the wreckage, his sigils dimming, his breath shallow. Above, the devourers descended. Kestrel's voice echoed from the ruins. "I'm here, I'm everywhere." The Luminari emerged, their song rising in defiance, but their light gutted against the devourers, hunger, their harmonies unraveling. Jin hauled Soren upright. "Get up, we need to move." He shook his head, blood trickling from his nose. "No, we finish this." The sigils flared one last time. In the end, it wasn't a weapon that saved them. It was a song. Kestrel's voice, pure, unbroken, rippled through the sanctuary, carried by the shard's light still burning in Soren's veins. The devourers recoiled, their void flesh blistering under the strain of true symbiosis. The Luminari joined him, their chorus weaving with his, until the very air vibrated with healing light. The devourers shattered. When silence returned, the sanctuary was scorched but alive. The Luminari tended their forests, their song softer now, weary. Soren lay in the grass, Kestrel's voice a fading whisper in his mind. "I'm sorry, Dad." Jin sat beside him, her coral arm lifeless, its thorns rusted. "He's gone." "No," Soren touched his chest, the sigils now scars. "Just quiet." Above, the stars burned a little brighter. Chapter 16. The sanctuary's forests still smouldered from the devourers' retreat, their bioluminescent canopies dimmed to a sickly grey. Soren knelt by a river of fading light, his hands submerged in the tepid current, the sigils on his chest pulsing in time with the Luminari's weary song. Kestrel's voice had grown quieter these past days, a distant hum where once there had been clarity. "They're coming." Soren jerked upright, water sloshing over his boots. The voice was Kestrel. It was colder, fractured, laced with static. Jin stood at the tree line, her coral arm now a gnarled mass of thorns and jagged spines. It twitched as she approached, as though fighting her. Echelon's fleet just breached the sector. They've brought something new. Bigger. How long? An hour, maybe less. She flexed her fingers, the coral creaking. Your kid's still chatty. Soren touched his chest, the sigils flaring briefly. He's fading. Join the club. They returned to the Haven's carcass, its coral hull half swallowed by the forest. The Luminari had woven new growth through its skeleton, but the ship was a ghost now, a tomb for the shard's remnants. Inside, the holograph flickered with Echelon's advance. Dozens of warships, their hulls grafted with pulsating Luminari coral, drifted toward the sanctuary. At their helm loomed a dreadnought, its core glowing with a familiar, corrupted light. They've rebuilt the Devour's tech, Soren muttered. Worse, Jin said. They've improved it. The attack began at dawn. Echelon's hybrids descended first, soldiers fused with Luminari coral, their limbs twisted into serrated weapons. They moved silently, efficiently, carving through the sanctuary's defenses. The Luminari fought back with shrieking harmonics, their song bending the air into blades, but for every hybrid felled, 3 more took its place. Soren and Jin held the tree line. The Haven's last functional cannon strafed the sky. We can't hold this, Jin shouted, her coral arm shredding a hybrid's chest. We don't have to. Soren slammed his palm against the cannon's organic interface. The sigils on his chest blazed, and the cannon roared, its projectiles bursting into bioluminescent fire. Echelon's vanguard ships erupted in showers of molten coral. But the dreadnought remained, its core pulsing hungrily. Luren's face filled the comms, his features warped by Luminari fibers snaking under his skin. You've lost, Soren. Give us the shard, and we'll make his death quick. He's already gone, Soren lied. Liar, Luren's grin split his face, coral teeth glinting. The boy in there. We can taste him. The dreadnought's core flared. A beam of corrupted light lanced toward the sanctuary. Shields, Jin barked. Soren reacted instinctively, the sigils burning as he channeled the Luminari's song. A dome of light erupted, deflecting the beam, but the impact shattered the Haven's cannon and sent Soren sprawling. Blood trickled from his nose. They've synced their weapons to the Devourer's frequency. So melt their damn ships. I can't, not without Kestrel. Dad. The whisper was faint, desperate. Soren clutched his chest. Kes. They're hurting them. The Luminari make it stop. Jin dragged him behind a smouldering tree as another beam struck. Whatever you're planning, do it fast.
This story continues. Subscribe to our channel, like the video, and listen to the rest.